You are listening to Investing Matters, brought to you in association with London South East. This is the show that provides informative, educational and entertaining content from the world of investing. We do not give advice, so please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the new London South East podcast. This is the new Investing Matters podcast with me, Peter Higgins. And today I have the great privilege of speaking with Elizabeth Gooch MBE, the award-winning, innovative entrepreneur, businesswoman, and tech, someone say queen, maybe, but she's won lots of awards and she's here with me today. She's very busy with lots and lots of other jobs, so we're quite blessed to have her with us today. How are you doing, Elizabeth?
I'm great, thank you, Peter. It's really good to see you too.
Great. We're going to talk about some of your awards later. I want to start somewhere where most people haven't been before with you in an interview, because I like to be provocative, as you know. But Elizabeth, I want to start with Patsy Fagan and the ambitious Elizabeth that molded herself on her grandmother. Please, can you tell me about both of those individuals, please?
How did you find out about Patsy Fagan?
I'm a researcher, mate. Go ahead.
Patsy Fagan was my imaginary friend when I was a child. And I used to go to my grandmother's garden and have very long discussions with Patsy Fagan. I can't tell you what about. And I don't even know where the name came from, but he was a good friend. Let's just say that. And interestingly that I said he, not she.
Yeah.
He was a good friend.
Absolutely, it's a he. Yeah. Okay. And your grandmother?
Oh, my grandmother was an amazing lady. She wasn't an entrepreneur, but she was the main breadwinner in the family. And my grandfather was deaf, actually. So I remember my grandfather was a very silent person. I mean, the sort of aids for hearing weren't great back then. And he also used to switch his hearing aid off so he didn't have to listen to my grandmother. So he spent a lot of time with his own thoughts in his own head, totally ignoring my grandmother, who was rabbiting on in the background. But she had, the first car in the village, she had the first TV. She was always very first. And I don't think it was competitive. It's just that she wanted these innovations in her life and she went out and got them. So I was pretty much granny reared and took my inspiration from her, really. So it was in her garden that I was actually chatting to Patsy Fagan. God knows why. She must told me there was someone at the garden that wanted to meet me, I think, probably something like that. You wouldn't do that nowadays, would you? It would be very dangerous. Someone said, go meet someone at the garden, you'd go, I'm not doing that. But in those days, we didn't care. We spent a lot of time playing outdoors, and I distinctly remember my father used to say to other children, go and play up your own end, which obviously you wouldn't say that either now, would you? Because that has other connotations.
Yes.
But playing up other people's ends was actually something that you did a lot of, and creative play and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's really good fun.
Yeah, that's a very Midlands term, isn't it? Play at your own ends. I want to move a bit forward now with your upbringing and touching on school education and first job and your thoughts then, and not really getting any satisfaction of doing something really good when you were younger and thinking, you know what, sod this, I'm off.
I think I've sodded off a few times. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that word actually,
yeah,
but I have. So I was actually very studious for many years. Grade A, GCSE, GCEs, or whatever they were called, lots of them. Took extra GCEs because I wanted to do this, that, and the other. And then got into A levels, and I don't know what it was. There was something about me. I just became very rebellious. Anyway, I ended up telling the headmaster to F off and was asked to go and play up someone else's end, basically. In other words, leave, please go. You're not welcome here. So I did, and my father was absolutely furious. He was like, because he'd got visions of me being a vet or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, and all of these things that he wanted me to do, which basically meant years and years and years of more study. And I just wanted to earn money, and I'm not sure why. Didn't come from a particularly wealthy background, and I was probably going to guess it was my grandmother. That working spirit was in me from my grandmother's influence. So I wanted to go to work. So he said, well, if you're not going to go to university, you've got to go out and get a job. So I got a job in a factory and I absolutely adored it. And there I learned about production management, people in white coats that actually managed the production line. There were white coats then, rather than people who were actually doing the actual stuff on the line. But I learned about that. It's a very strong influence in my life, actually, in my younger years. And then I did sort of sod off again and go, no, I'm going to do my own thing. But at that point, it was like, look, if you're not going to university, you've got to get a proper job. No daughter of mine is going to work in a factory. You need to get a job in in a proper business like financial services. Well, we all know what happened to financial services, don't we, really? It just the whole world turned upside down and manufacturing became much more respectable. So I applied for jobs in financial services and also utilities, and I blagged my way onto a Midland Bank graduate trainee scheme. And I say blagged, but actually I was helped greatly by the fact that there weren't enough graduates at that time. And so I got a position there. But after 6 months, I was like, I don't want to do this, I'm bored. And I'd spent 6 months going department to department, watching work as a trainee and thinking, oh God, I can't stand this anymore. And I just said, I'm going to leave. And they were like, no one leaves the Midland Bank trainee scheme. Would you like to try this department over here? And actually what that department was the office version of work study being rolled out across the bank, working with Coopers and Lybrand to actually do it. And I went into that department and I absolutely loved it. But I was asked to go and improve performance in these departments. And I'd go into these departments. But you just imagine this, the comptometer operators, right? Now, these were big ladies who used to go ka-choom with the machines, ka-choom with the figures, ka-choom, all day long. And I don't know why I thought of them as big, but they just always seemed like very fit ladies because this big handle that they had to pull in order to get it to work. And if you go in there and you tell them you're not working hard enough, you're only 75% productive, age 23 at this point, and basically being told, excuse me, would you like to go and take a run and jump? Go and play with your own end. This is becoming a job. So anyway, I happen to be doing this in one of these departments where they've got a real problem with backlogs of work, massive explosion in credit applications, and they just couldn't cope. And the girls were all really stressed and they were crying. And I just went, I know to solve this problem. And we laid it all out as desks in a line with the paper going down, because a lot of paper, obviously, in those days, all the paper going down the line, and where there was a bottleneck, we put extra staff in, we put Lotus Notes things in, because obviously spreadsheets, Microsoft didn't exist then, that old. And we cleared the backlogs and everybody stopped crying and everybody was like, this is great, can you do it here, can you do it here, can you do it here? And I realised actually that what I'd done was bring production management into the office. So I kept applying for jobs to become a manager of some of these departments that I'd sorted out, and kept getting told you can be an assistant. And I was like, well, I don't want to be anybody's assistant. You know, I'm the main woman, so I want to do my own show. So I left and started a business to implement production management in the office and improve performance in financial services throughout the world. How audacious was that? Age 26. So that's how actually getting started with my first business actually developed. And the interesting thing was that I'd always wanted to have my own business, but I was scratching around waiting for the light bulb moment to come. And the light bulb moment never came, but the need for a solution came through working with customers. And that's something that I've carried through into my third career, which I'm actually on now, and helping startups to achieve that mythical 1 million of annual recurring revenue. And what's the secret sauce to actually doing that? So that's how I got started in business, Peter.
I love that story, and I love the fact you just decided to just go out on your own, because we're now in and around 1988, where EG Consulting, as it was called then, started. So just explain to me this innovation that you saw and what you wanted to see regarding efficiencies, because this is what we're going through now with lots of other companies.
Yes.
And they need to do it even more so, whether it be for ESG reasons or for climate change reasons or, you know, fuel and CapEx reasons. So what were you seeing that early that was just wastage?
Everywhere was wastage. The interesting thing was that financial services companies that I worked in used to say, we are people businesses, whilst at the same time never training their people in what to do. They would hire people, bring them in and just shove them into teams and expect them to organically work out what needed to be done. There was no definition of process. There was no production thinking in these back office areas. Actually, there wasn't even call centres there. That it started to emerge about 1985, where you got the split out of telephone on paper. So it was all of this homogenous stuff that needed to be organised so that it could be worked efficiently. And, you know, it was just utter chaos, really, in how work actually happened. And generally what I would observe is that work happened when the customer chased. So people would go, oh God, yeah, I've got to go and do that. You know, this idea of an end-to-end SLA and service just didn't exist back then. So because of seeing the results that this production management could actually do, and there was starting to be interest in world-class manufacturing in the service sector, because the service sector was starting to go, hang on a bit, what's manufacturing doing over there? I basically piggybacked on that message and went out and sold the concept of implementing production management in the office. So I got a very glossy brochure produced, and I did mail shots and cold calling. And I got on the train to London and I knocked on the doors of financial services organisations. I mean, this is literally the only sales training I'd ever had was Everest double glazing, knocking on doors. Great training in rejection, got to say that, and having the door slammed in your face. And you wouldn't do that career now easily as a woman, to be honest. I don't think, not knocking on doors at night, strangers' doors.
No.
And that's basically what I did. I went down to London to financial services institutions and nagged door people and secretaries until I got in front of people to say, this is what I can do for you. And the messages about I can improve productivity by 20% resonated. People were obviously looking to cut cost. Back then, service was spelt COST in this sector. And the visionary customers that it attracted, these are people who were interested in manufacturing, production, management. They're interested in Deming and quality and all of these sorts of things. Those visionary people were the ones that I had meetings with who said, yeah, okay, let's go. And the first customer was, well, why would I buy from you and not from XYZ? And quick as a flash, and God knows why I did it. I said, because I will guarantee to deliver you 25% cost benefit. And then I had to work like stink to make it bloody work. But I'll tell you what, it's nothing like you don't get paid unless you deliver. Focus the mind to work out how to deliver. And after 3 clients, I suddenly realised I'm sick to death of doing a spreadsheet for each one. So knocked up a piece of software, not me personally, because I don't do that, but one of the guys that I brought in to work with me, knocked it up on a Sunday on a laptop. And away we went with our first iteration of a software product, which I think nowadays you might call an MVP. We called it full-blown product. We were installing it in customers and charging them for it. But it actually was given away free, all but maintenance to start with. And it was only when Clerical Medical called me, big life and pensions business, big brand in Bristol, to say, can you come and meet the IT director? And I got a total dressing down because the software had been networked. And it had brought the network down, and obviously it hadn't been built for networking. So we had to rebuild the software, and they actually funded that development. So there became the first software product that was funded by client fees. And we never raised any money to build the product other than out of using profit and working capital generated from client fees to actually build it. So that's how it happened.
That's pretty amazing then, because essentially it was Clerical Medical that actually,
Oh, yeah.
feeded your startup.
Yeah, I had some amazing customers and various anniversaries, 10, 20, 25-year anniversaries. Those customers still came along, even though some of them had retired. I still have Christmas cards with them even now. And I would say our software became the fantastic software that it was, largely because of the client input that we had. We took a concept to them. Here's what we think your problem is. Here's a solution we believe can really add value. And they'd go, yes, but can it do this, 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 and this? And over time, we ended up with this amazing platform that could do virtually anything that any customer in the service sector needed, particularly regulated industries that they needed. It was just amazing, really.
Well, it seems to have gone on extremely well because you grew the business. It grew very, very quickly. And then you've got your lifetime business partner with you now, came into the business. And in 2005, you'd been ushered to float this business on AIM. And I've read a few bits and pieces. And
First money raised, Peter.
First money raised, yeah, I must add.
You wouldn't do that now.
And some of it was you saying, maybe we went a bit too early. But, you go into 2005, it's listed on AIM, everything's going great. And, you're going from strength to strength and just growing at a rapid speed and generating revenue. And everybody wants a piece of Elizabeth Gooch and now called EG Solutions. And you're getting awards for everything.
Yeah.
And you're also in an arena of tech means men.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely.
Masculine toxicity. And you're going, get out of the way,
Yeah. Back then, there were very few women in tech. Even now, the industry average is 17%. We have 35% in EG and really struggled to get more. That wasn't actually because we didn't want more, but we struggled to get more and struggled to retain more as their lifestyles changed, because that does happen. So, you have to become quite flexible as an employer to retain women as they go through these life changes. So it was a pretty tough gig actually getting above that 35%, but we had a very diverse workforce in terms of every ist that you can think of: sex, race, religion, ability. We had very diverse and very disparate workforce, I would say, also, because it was spread all over the world, and we would hire skill wherever we needed that skill. We were very advanced in terms of that from a working from home point of view. Although I have to say, as a little aside, I was actually the world's worst CEO for working from home policy back then. Now I'm the best CEO as far as working from home policy, because I now go, oh my God, this is so amazing. But I had this real belief back then that the core team needed to be in the office for the purposes of team building and fairness to people that had to come to the office every day because this stuff wasn't at home. And I reckon some of my old team would probably go, bloody hell, listen to her now, going banging on about working from home and you don't need an office and her business is virtual. No, she wouldn't do it then. You can just imagine all of that. And I'm like,
well, this is growth, isn't it? This is about you getting older and wiser. And even you, Elizabeth, you was talking about working smarter and more efficient back then. You're doing it now more for yourself.
I've evolved more in the last 3 years than in the previous 10, trust me.
Brilliant. It's really good to hear. Now, I wanted for people who don't understand and didn't really know about EGS, for you to just give me a little synopsis of what they did and why it was so innovative and ahead of its time. If it was Tesla or the back office back then, it probably was so far ahead of everybody else. People went, I don't need that, until they actually were desperate to sort it out.
Yeah, well, I would say creating a market is probably one of the hardest things that any entrepreneur can do. And I actually do say to my startups now, I don't mind if there's competition, because competition helps make a market. But we invented a product, and I'm going to say we, because although it was my idea, I didn't build it all on my own. So we invented a solution that became called back office workforce optimization. And I've mentioned already, the consultancy started off with production management in the office. And we changed it to back office workforce optimization because I'm also mentioning, the split between contact center, calls and back office meant the call side went off, and, vendors got involved and developed workforce management solutions for the front office and left the back office behind, and there was nothing there. And that's where our solution played well. And so we could actually see over time that would be sort of converging as a marketplace. And so the phrase back office workforce optimization was created largely by analysts who were late to the party, but that's the name that they put to it. That helped enormously, but at the same time, it brought in big competition. Now, that big competition was great because it also helped to build a market. They also became one of the acquirers further down the track. So that had a separate sort of story to it. But back to what the solution did, basically, it helped businesses manage end-to-end complex processes very efficiently and manage the people around the work so that people's performance improved massively because the expectations of what they needed to do when, in the right order and priorities, etc., were all managed for them by a system, by a process. And then what that enabled the teams to do was actually perform really well as individuals rather than relying on the people to do the process. So the businesses then owned the process, the system owned the work, and the people performed well in that environment. And implementing that software would deliver a minimum of 25% productivity improvement in 6 months, very often in the region of 35 to 50%. Where does that productivity gap come from? And you may say, how can these organisations have run with that much capacity? They couldn't see what that capacity was there because the process management side was so inefficient. And once that was streamlined and automated using the software, people then basically were able to focus on doing the core elements of the job rather than on managing work and chasing their tail and follow-ups and all of that sort of thing. So that's where those savings actually came from.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, because obviously you get recognised for this then. You're winning all these awards. You're winning UK Tech Entrepreneur, CEO of the Year awards and so on and so forth. And then the Queen comes knocking for little old Elizabeth Gooch. Tell me about that.
I was a big shock. I had absolutely no idea anything about that. Came home, I think, from a holiday and opened this envelope that looked very nice. And in it said, she'd like to invite you to accept an award. And I was like, oh my God. In fact, even now, just even saying it, I still get the tingles. I've never felt I deserved it, to be honest. I think they call it imposter syndrome now. Fraud is what I used to say. But fraud. It's called imposter syndrome. It's got a posh name. But the actual experience of getting the award was amazing also. I mean, all mobile phones taken off you, so you really do have to concentrate and are able to. And I see that's the right thing for them to do so that you get to feel that experience. But it came about because of the work that we're doing with UK trade and investment and exports, and actually exporting to South Africa and obviously other territories as well. Our software eventually was used in 50 countries throughout the world. But yeah, amazing.
Absolutely phenomenal, mate. I think it's deserved. I think the main thing for me, Elizabeth, and you've always said this really, is that one of the things about being successful is that you have to be true to yourself. You have to back yourself. And I think if you truly believe that you can do something and you manifest it, you visualize it, you can achieve it. And I don't think enough people believe in themselves, and they get so many knockbacks and people trying to undermine them and all the rest of it. So, I think you have to just carry on believing in your own abilities sometimes.
Yeah, yes, I'm going to say that.
So we've almost reached a little bit of a mini sort of peak in all things going really, really great. And we start the year, we're going to go to 2017 now. We're going to fast forward to 2017, right? And you know where I'm going to go with this, so prepare yourself, right? You start the year in February, everything's going tickety-boo. You get a 692 grand contract and everything's going woo, woo, woo. We fast forward to September and you're getting another knock on the door that you don't want and you're being taken over. But prior to that, you were like, not sure that this is the value we want to exit at, but you end up leaving anyway.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about, because this is about leadership now, and this is about you're managing companies. Every single thing that you put into place sometimes doesn't go, even when you put a plan in place or I put a plan in place.
By the time we got to September, by the time I got to 2017, I was less than 25% shareholder. So that was one of the things that the professional investors were very keen on, is that I would sell down over time. I mean, it would never happen, I don't think now, but I think our free float was about 32% when we actually listed in 2012, and I still owned 68%. And at the beginning, it wasn't a problem, but as governance requirements increased, that became a problem for investors who wanted to see me selling down so that I didn't have that controlling stake. So I think I was probably about 17% by the end. Not 100% sure of the numbers now. And I think the key thing is, as a founding CEO, you wear a number of hats. You are an employee, so you're a salaried employee, salaried CEO on the one hand. You're a director on the other hand, so you have fiduciary duties to take care of all of your stakeholders, including the company and the other stakeholders. You're also a shareholder, but you're one of many shareholders, and you've got to look after the shareholders' interests. So it's not a straight line of, I want to do this anymore. You've got to take into account these other needs and requirements. And this offer had come along a couple of times, actually, and the shareholders wanted to do it. And so I didn't have a controlling stake to stop it. But even if I had, I wouldn't have used it. Because, as I say, you've got to take into account the needs of everyone else. And I think, actually, there were two things that swung it for me. One was the VC, some of which had come in at 6p, were quite keen to sell. So why wouldn't you? They just see it as I can get a good return here. But the other side is what's best for the company. And what the acquirer was actually offering was, we're going to take the company global. And that's what we wanted to do. It wasn't the decision that I personally wanted, but I believed it was the decision that was the right one to make at the time. There were some retail investors that were not happy, and an EIS investor that wasn't happy because it was within the 3 years that they'd invested. So it wasn't good for them, but for the majority, it was.
Yeah, I mean, Verint were, £1 billion revenue company at the time as well, and they were offering, I think it was a 50+% premium at 112.5 pence. So the VCs at 6 pence were laughing their heads off, weren't they? So not everybody was happy. I understand that.
Including me. I wasn't happy with it.
Yeah, I know you weren't, because I think we were speaking at the time. I think you handled it really, really well. And I couldn't believe it. What really staggered me was the fact they asked you, and obviously you had a good relationship with the Verint team, they asked you to stay on for 3 months to just, a bit of prepping stuff for them. And you did. I was like, I wouldn't have done that. That shows the sort of method you've got.
It was actually 6, but I didn't stay for that long. The funny thing was, Peter, a lot of the professional investors always used to say to me that, one of them particularly used to say, you've got high control needs. And I'd go, no, not personal control needs, but control with a small c. And I think the implication was about delegation and, letting go. But the reality was I built a team that could actually work without me. And I'd spent an awful lot of my time on the city side of the business rather than in the business. So Verint were able to take a business that was well cooked and didn't need a lot of sorting out because it just worked. It was a great team.
Absolutely. You did it exceptionally well. I mean, this is why, Elizabeth, I think you're so sought after up and down the country to give talks on leadership, on startups, on angel investing, and all the rest of it. You're just an actual tour de force, as they say. So we're going to talk now about this new decade of what you're involved in and the Tech Growth Factory, which is your baby, I think, really, essentially. And you're helping UK tech startups and scale up, essentially, to get them into thriving businesses. So let's talk about that now and what you've been doing, because I know you've been busy. It's been so difficult to get hold of you in the last couple of years. So tell us a bit about that.
Well, there's a lot of startups out there, aren't there? Is it about 6,000 a year that are formed and about 35,000 startups and scale-ups in the UK? And the stats are, depending on which stat you read, somewhere between 70 and 90% will fail within the first 3 to 5 years. So the stats vary, but the general message here is there is a lot of failure in startup world. And so my reason why is actually to help more of those to actually succeed and get over that period where failure rate is high and to the point where 1 million of annual recurring revenue, that's when serious professional investors start to get interested. But how do you get there? It's pretty much left to chance. And there's a fair few theoretical programs, but it's still go away and do it yourself. I've actually been there and done that. I mean, part of the story that we didn't talk about with EG, we actually started before networking was rolled out massively in big corporations. So we started on standalone machines. It wasn't even networked. The licensing model was perpetual. We started with 0 revenue every year that we then had to build and grow every time. It wasn't SaaS, it wasn't subscription at that point. That just wasn't about. We pivoted to that in 2012 and we grew 6 million of annual recurring revenue in 4 years on 3 to 5 year contracts. In fact, one of them was a 7-year contract. That was a massive growth in recurring revenue in a short period of time. And, that was the thing that would have sustained us and taken us forward. And we could have achieved an awful lot more following that model. But to survive, that's what these little businesses need to do, is to get from A to B as safely as possible. So the serious investors will come in and invest in them. And I think there's 2 things that they need in place to get serious investors. One is, yes, you get there because you then prove that there's a market, the customers are interested. But most importantly, there's a scalable, repeatable business model underneath that is investable. And actually, it's the scalable, repeatable business model that's the investable engine, not the annual recurring revenue. Because you can actually, if you do it right, you can get to 1 million with 1 or 2 contracts. That doesn't prove anything. That just proves that you've solved 2 customers' problems. Let's build that scalable, repeatable engine that proves we can get velocity in a sales process and get volume through. And that becomes then an investable proposition. Why am I doing it? I don't 100% know, really, Peter, if I'm completely honest. Just startup world and squeaky bum moments, having lived like that for 30 years, I'm just addicted to it, I guess. And also, being completely honest, I was looking around for the light bulb moment to start again. And again, it happened where the business evolved out of work that I was doing to help others. And while I was doing that work, out of that evolved what I call Act 3. And I'm going to make it my best act. That's my plan.
That's brilliant, because there was a little time, well, you still got the job, actually. You took NED role, if I'm correct.
Oh, yeah, I got a couple of those.
First one, was that with ECSC, wasn't it?
ECSC, yeah. And actually, that was with a CEO who'd gone through a pretty traumatic time himself with his board. And, just kindred spirits. They're still on that board. Cyber, obviously, being, the other thing I try to do is to work with technologies that have got market interest and resonance. let's say. Although having said that, I've got involved in some strange things like virtual reality and logistics, which I actually didn't continue with that one. You know, the one that got away. Just imagine what that would be, training lorry drivers using virtual reality now in the logistics industry. Do you think that might be in demand? Yes.
Oh, I think
was
so.
it too early for me? Yes, it was, and I wished I'd done it.
It's all learning, Elizabeth.
Yeah, it is.
So you're sticking around the tech and the innovations and all the rest of it. Doing that with cyber, with the ECSC. You're doing that with Tech Hub and all these other companies that you're seeing and you're speaking to, and you're looking at all these companies all the time. The bit that I want to get from you, Elizabeth, right? And this is very important for investors. You're investing in some of these companies and you're also investing your time in some of these companies. Most of the ones that you're doing angel investing are not listed, right? But if one of them might, have an exit at some stage. What are you looking for other than the innovation? What are you looking for in the leaders? Because I always think it's very important to choose really good leaders. You're doing your due diligence on these leaders. What are you looking for and what should investors be looking for?
My very first principle, one of my own core values is making a difference. I have to make a difference and deliver value. And that value word, I think, is the key to success for a startup. And the question I asked them was, what is the value that you're actually delivering and who you're delivering it for? And they sometimes look at me quizzically and they go, but actually over here, I built this thing and it's going to be the best XYZ in the world and it's going to revolutionise whatever. And I go, okay, why? And what's it going to do? And who are you doing it for? So I'm looking for a sort of 3-minute max answer that actually they can say, we've developed this. It helps XYZ person to do ABC and it improves their lives in this way. And what's the difference that you're going to make to someone? And is there enough of those someones to actually make a market to deliver the plan that you're suggesting you can deliver, which is always a hockey stick. I mean, you must have seen it yourself. Every blooming pitch deck you see is a hockey stick, and you're like, that's just so unreal. There's no such thing as a hockey stick, is there? It's very bumpy in business. So that's the first thing I look for, is what's the value that they're going to deliver and what's the solution to do that. And I'm not really bothered about the tech. I don't really care. I think probably some of the worst businesses I see are the ones that have built this and it's perfect. And I'm like, well, actually, you put the money into the product and you have not even spoken to the customers yet to find out what they want. A firm believer that the customers finish your product for you and tell you what will solve their problem in detail. So let's start with that one. Interesting point about leadership, because 9 times out of 10, and I'm one of those, the people that start businesses and found stuff and invent things are not necessarily the leaders that should take those businesses forward forever through every stage. So I guess I'm looking for, at that point, people who have got the ability to get to that 1 million of annual recurring and lead their team to that point. And also the listening ability to learn, not just from me, but from others, about what are the right things that they need to do in order to achieve that. So I'm looking for that. You have to like the people. And I think sometimes, that startups are good. You're like, we need 500,000, we need it now. And you're like, I'm not going to do that with you. I want to know who you are and find out who you are, because you've got to get on. Because business is bumpy, as I've said. And if you fall out in the rough times, that's going to happen. You're going to fall out, but actually, can you recover and get on with it and still be a good team thereafter? But the ability to listen I think is really key. That's the key leadership skill that I would look for.
Investing Matters in association with London South East, one of the UK's leading share information websites for the private investor community, providing share prices, news and data straight to your desktop, tablet and phone.
With regards to one of your more recent engagements, was it Connexia? Yeah, you were with?
Yeah.
So that was quite an innovative company, and you've only recently finished working with them. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that went? And I'm going to talk about some of the others as well going forward.
Yeah, that's fine. Connexia was actually a partner who was working with EG, and were going to develop and had developed their solution to actually provide a better business intelligence solution for our clients. And so we basically looked at our product and gone, look, our core engine is our sweet spot. That's what we know best. But we've got so much data in here, and data is a massive asset that organisations want to use. But we're not the best people to actually extract that data and surface it and have a BI solution as well. That would mean we're doing two things at the same time. So we had a partnership with Connexica to actually provide their solution. And it is an amazing business intelligence tool that they developed. And we were pretty much good to go when the acquisition happened. But of course, Verint got their own BI tools and platform. And what they wanted was clients to have everything surfaced through that. And so poor old Connexica, having put a lot of effort and time into this solution, were cut loose. And so the CEO, he just basically said, I need some help. I'm in this position. Can you help me? And so I did. And I did that. And that business went from struggling, cash strapped, small average sales in 12 to 18 months to £1 million of order book of recurring revenue, £25,000 average sale, subscription model, enough cash to get itself through COVID unaided. And they did an amazing job. And actually, they wanted to then go on and do other things. And I wanted to go do other things. And I think that's one of the things I've learned from that experience is I don't need to be involved forever. You can be involved for 2 to 3 years to help them through this position. And then they're ready for other people. And so you shouldn't hang around if they're ready to do something else. So that's what happened.
It shows us how strong you are and resolute and how much resilience you have. I think the other thing that people don't know about you, Elizabeth, is your ability to help businesses not only to grow, but actually find and seek out funding to have the foundations to actually grow, because all businesses need money. And a lot of companies have got fantastic ideas, but they don't know where to source the money from or how to get people to invest into them. So you're sometimes investing alongside, but also helping them find the monies as well. So do you want to expand on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, well, my first advice to them is the first place you get money is from sales. So let's go out there and get sales. It's the cheapest money that you will ever raise. And then, I mentioned already, our first money that we raised was IPO, wrong on every level nowadays. But at that time, there wasn't the network and the infrastructure in place that current tech companies have. That just didn't exist. Your choices back then were bank lending, and banks, they'd only wanted to lend for manufacturing kit, or you could list. So that's how we ended up where we were. So, that's the first bit of advice. Let's not go to an IPO straight away. There's a continuum here. Your own money, your sales, your friends and family, angel investors. And then we get into the professional money, and we might get to an IPO or not further down the line, depending on what you actually want to do with your business. So helping them through that is something that I do. And I work with Minerva on the angel side and take businesses to the angel network. And there's a lot of angels out there willing to help now. Obviously, it went very quiet through COVID. Raising through COVID was a bit of a challenge, but it was done. And then obviously I've got the network of people that I work with in the city and still do, that I can take them to as well. And I try and advise them, it's always try and get a little bit of grown-up money. And they go, what do you mean about that? So let's get the money from the next level. So you start to act as if. So if you're acting as if you have got outside money, when you go to get outside money, the outside investors are going to go, oh yeah, you know what you're talking about, you're ready for that. And the same, as you go forward. So getting that, I'm going to say governance with a small g. So you don't want anything really heavy, and you certainly don't want PLC costs, but you want a good financial reporting deck. You want good KPIs that monitor where you're going. And you want to adopt correct accounting principles in the way you recognise revenue. So when people lift the lid, do a bit of DD, they go, oh yeah, that's all fine. I haven't got to worry about that. Let's concentrate on market, product, etc. So that's the way I help them. And also take the hockey stick and the Gartner magic quadrant out of the deck. Because everybody always thinks their solution is top right corner of the Gartner quadrant. And they always go 10 million in seconds. That's just... They think that's the message that investors want to hear, and I don't think they do. I think investors want to know what's the milestones that you're going to go on and why you're here now. So that's the help, really.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, one of the companies that you've been involved in for a little while, Expandly, you recently became the CEO of that. And I'm like, oh, you've taken on a CEO role. That's absolutely phenomenal. So I want you to talk to me about that, because that seems to be really a really sweet spot right now with e-commerce, and everything being sold online, and you seem to be ahead of the game here in consolidating that and making sure that businesses can just go in one place and just do whatever they want to do. So tell us about Expandly.
Well, the interesting thing, it's exactly what EG software was. We were doing that in the back office, bringing all of these different channels of work together, phone, paper, computer, whatever, messages, prints, all that stuff into one single front end, so that an agent or whatever we want to call them, sitting there has got a single channel of work. It's exactly the same for retailers that sell on multiple channels. And with the added complexity of these channels change virtually every week, and the rules within these channels that are owned by the likes of Amazon, eBay, all the different channels that you can think of, all the rules are different. There's nothing standard across that sector. So for retailers, being able to manage that minefield, it's very high level of manual tasks, very administrative, increases cost. There's this immediate read across from the EG side. With, for me, the brain challenge that I had was a massive learning curve of the e-commerce world and these channels and actually getting to grips with them. But I inherited a COO, CFO, who's one of the best people I've ever worked with. Really, really strong. And we have a good relationship. And together we're turning that business around, and it needed a lot of re-engineering under the hood, and away we go. So yeah, it's a really interesting one.
No, it looks interesting. I've looked at it and I thought, wow, you guys are competing with some real behemoths there and getting stuff done. And the fact that you're being recognized as well by other companies that are looking at Expandly is really amazing. But my investing head on, I'm thinking, taking the role as CEO, what's the cunning 3-year, 5-year plan here? Are you looking at becoming a behemoth, or are you looking at floating it possibly? Are you looking for a trade exit?
Yes, and yes.
You don't have to give away any secrets.
All of the above.
All of those things.
There's no secret. I mean, the main goal is restoring shareholder value. And in fact, it's a secondary goal, because our first goal is helping retailers sell more on more channels and make more profit. That's our goal. So our goal is very customer focused, which the business hadn't traditionally been. And with the subsidiary goal of restoring shareholder value. So some shareholders have come in at a much racier price than we invested at. And obviously we're very disappointed when, the business didn't achieve its target. So there's some big numbers that need to be delivered to repair that. But most angels are looking for an exit, aren't they, really? I mean, that's the point. Everybody's looking for, how do I monetize this investment that I've made? How do I get my return? So you have to look at all options. And this industry is very fragmented. There's competition in there. It will consolidate. And so the options are be consolidated or be a consolidator, for sure. It's all to play for. But at the minute, we're working on that immediate goal of that X million of annual recurring revenue to restore shareholder value. And when we get there, then, what's our next option? I mean, obviously, we won't leave it until we do get there. But, you focus on what you've got to do today whilst being mindful of the future.
I like that. I saw something really interesting when I was doing some of my research, and one of the companies that you're involved in is the total messaging solution company, Nevo.
Yeah.
And I saw something related to CLS Money.
Oh, yeah.
They were looking at mortgages, and each mortgage, we've just had COP26, haven't we, Elizabeth? So it's fantastic. But each mortgage or whatever contract they win, they've got a relationship partnership now with a company called More Trees. They're going to plant a tree. I'm thinking, wow, how many companies could do that and plant 1 million trees and just deal with this climate issue?
There's a story there, and I'm sure you're asking me that question for a reason. Based on LinkedIn.
You know me so well. Go on.
Oh, you're so nosy. So the CEO and founder of Expandly, Alan Wilson, he developed the More Trees solution and sold it to the Hook Group after he left Expandly. So that's the connection.
Cool beans, right.
And what a great exit for that little business. He just developed it and started it and sold it to the Hook Group. So it's an amazing story for him. So well done.
Absolutely lovely story. I've got a couple more questions, but I wanted to touch really on, you did a lot in the Midlands, you do a lot now in Manchester, and then all of a sudden I see you popping up in Scotland with a Vini. You're everywhere, mate. You're everywhere.
Well, the world is a small place. I don't have to travel there anymore, do I? No, this is my rule. I'll be in the office. It doesn't matter. So Zoom takes you everywhere.
So if you don't go to Scotland, Scotland will come to you. I get it.
Well, it's worse than that, Peter, because then people then say, would you come to our Christmas party? And I can't do 3 Christmas parties in different cities at the same time. So how do I manage that now? So someone's got to lose. But anyway, but lockdown and virtual working means you can help anyone, anywhere.
Yeah. So you've got Avini, Scottish software company. That one came to my attention. I'm looking at it and thinking, oh, AI. I love my AI now. I'm looking at all these different companies thinking, what niche are they in regarding AI and how can they do it? So just tell us a little bit about AI and what drew you to that company.
Actually, not the technology, because I don't know whether I've said this already, but I actually don't care about the technology per se. I mean, obviously, if somebody comes along with something really old and stupid, then I wouldn't get involved in it. But it's what is it doing that is the important thing for me and the value that it adds. Now, it's in a market that I know, speech analytics, but it's speech analytics plus. This is the next generation of speech analytics. And speech analytics, obviously, Verint had speech analytics solutions, of call centres. So we've worked alongside these tools for 25 years and obviously weren't around, but as they developed, we did. So I know the marketplace. But why is it plus? That sector was very homogenised, where the solutions were the solutions and you worked this way, you did this, that and the other. And as with all things, businesses then go, well, actually, we've done the basics now, what's next? Very helpfully, in the case of Aveni, what came along was a lot of government regulation around monitoring vulnerable customers. And that resonated with me, monitoring vulnerable customers and being able to identify who is a vulnerable customer through your interactions with them. And so all businesses have been regulated to monitor vulnerabilities, and many vulnerabilities. It could be, inability to pay. It could be you're being sold financial services products that are inappropriate for you. It could be, the elderly unable to get out to read their meter. It could even be someone with transient vulnerability who's got an illness or whatever and, can't X, Y, Z. But businesses have got to identify who these are. And what this solution enables businesses to do is 100% monitor every call, whereas speech analytics would do that, but there's still quite a bit of human interaction. It's about 30% better accuracy on the monitoring side, 100% of calls monitored so that all of those vulnerabilities get picked up. And that to me was the thing. And I could help them because they were in a marketplace that I know. So resonated what the solution was and what it was doing, but also in a marketplace that I know I can help them. So I know they're doing amazingly well, actually.
I just find it fascinating and brilliant that given all of the journey that you've had so far since pre-1988, that all these businesses now are almost finally, recognizing your sheer quality and brilliance, Elizabeth. And I just love it. I feel really proud to know that you're out there doing good, and these companies are doing what they're doing.
I just want to help more, Peter. That's the thing.
But it's brilliant. And I want to finish off with this last listed company that you're working with, because we started the conversation with you saying about your dad saying you play at your own end. And I find you in a shipbroking company, Braemar Seascope, now Braemar Shipping. And I'm like, what's Elizabeth doing there? You know what I mean?
I asked exactly that question. Why me? And why me is because the new CEO is a very federated model and he wants to bring the businesses together. He wants to grow rapidly. So all of that operational stuff that I've done before about how do you bring teams together and from decentralized to centralized models, that all comes into play. He wants automation. He wants to automate things so he makes it more efficient, so that he can fuel his growth, do more with less resource or more with the same resource, whichever way he wants to go. So he wants to do that. And he wants to offer solutions to his customers. So it has a technology side to it. And so for that reason, I said yes. And at the first, I was like, I don't even know what that means. What does it mean? So I had to go and sort of absorb myself in it. But culturally, I absolutely love that business and I love the people in it. And they have made massive progress in a very short space of time to bring decentralized businesses together as one team, which, that one team philosophy is really something that I'm really keen on. Yeah, so I said, yes, I would do it. And I'm really glad I did.
How are you having to go down and around to work all their various sites and put a hard hat on your lovely hair, Elizabeth?
I was scheduled to do that and going to Felixstowe to go on a ship and actually see all of this happening. And the Port Authority stopped it because of the latest increase in COVID cases. But the plan was most definitely hard hats.
Yes.
And boots. Steel toe cap boots was definitely the order of the day.
Lovely.
It's just massive ships. And you just have this thing of stuff moving and how do you move it more efficiently? And that's just a bigger process as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's fantastic. You've been working now for X amount of decades, mainly in industries dominated by men, and finally being recognized for your true worth. I think it's absolutely awesome. I want to close with one final question, really, and it's about investing and it's about tech. As investors, we're always looking, or I'm looking, and some of them that are interested in tech companies are looking for innovative companies. Now, you've said in this interview that you're not always looking at the tech, you're looking at the leaders, or you're looking at, how to make it more efficient. There are companies now still carrying a lot of inefficiencies. What would you say to an investor that's looking at a company that's having a deep dive, that they should be looking for, where companies are carrying, to use maybe the wrong term, the fat? You're looking at really efficient companies that are going to be able to keep maintaining their margins and not be struggling with debt or just running inefficiently. What they should look out for?
So are you talking about the tech companies themselves, or are we talking about their potential customers?
Yeah, companies in general, I think, but also looking out for the amber flags and the red flags. Say, this is an inefficient company, look out.
I'm going to turn that on its head slightly, Peter, and say to you that there will always be inefficiency because things can always be improved. So from an investor perspective, I would be looking for the businesses that have worked out what the value proposition is that they deliver to their customers. And if we're talking specifically about efficiency, can they articulate what that is? But it doesn't necessarily have to be efficiency, does it? You've mentioned ESG already. It could be things in that area. Although I have to say, I do feel still that ESG is being more mandated and businesses are doing it because they have to, rather than because they see the value of it. But I think, that's the key, is to actually get them to articulate. If you're going to invest in a business, get them to articulate what is the value that they add. And if they say it's increased sales, it's better service, it's increased efficiency, show me the measurements. What's the measurement? Articulate for me what that actually means. Things like, this process used to take 90 days, now takes 9 seconds. Whatever that is, measurable. Look for measurable indicators and customer testimonials that actually say, yes, it does do it.
Brilliant answer. Love that. Elizabeth, we've been talking for a little while now. I'm going to conclude this. And I want to just thank you ever so much. That was me, Peter Higgins, on the Investing Matters podcast for London South East, with the phenomenal investor, entrepreneur, MBE, scale-up mentor, visionary, Elizabeth Gooch MBE. Thank you very much. Take care. God bless.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Investing Matters. Be sure to check out the London South East website for free tools and info to research your next investment. You can also join in the conversation on our social media channels. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content, including our CEO interviews. Catch you next time.